episódio do podcast Facility Management sem mistérios. No programa de hoje nós vamos tratar de mais uma sessão da nossa série de entrevistas chamada FM of the World com um grande colega da Ásia que vai trazer um pouquinho dos desafios e das oportunidades que nós temos basicamente do outro lado do mundo. Mas antes da gente introduzir e conhecer o nosso convidado, eu queria dar mais um recadinho do nosso parceiro. Já falamos do Beer or Coffee em alguns dos nossos episódios aqui no podcast, por isso você já sabe que ele é o maior marketplace de espaços de trabalho da América Latina. O Beer or Coffee lançou uma nova plataforma para te ajudar a garantir créditos gratuitos para continuar explorando mais de 1.000 coworkers em todo o Brasil. A função Indique e Ganhe. É simples. Cadastre-se na plataforma, procure pela aba Indique e Ganhe no site ou aplicativo e encontre o seu link de indicação. Depois é só compartilhar com quem você quiser e dar uma diária grátis de presente. E claro, você também ganha. Cada colega que se cadastrar por meio do seu link e fizer a primeira reserva gratuita, garante mais um crédito para você conhecer um novo coworking. Cadastre-se, garante sua diária grátis, compartilhe o seu link de indicação e continue a ganhar créditos gratuitamente. Basta acessar www.beercoffee.com ou confira no link aqui da nossa inscrição. Então, como a gente sempre faz, vamos agora converter para o inglês para chamar o nosso amigo. So, to start this session of our program, of our podcast, I'd like to introduce my dear friend, Arivagara Pavithran, or as the friends know him, Pavi. Pavi, welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Tiago. Thank you so much for the introduction. Wonderful introduction. I only envy you that you can speak Portuguese, and I couldn't, but hey, it is what it is. We are in a different part of the world and the culture is different and the flavors is different. But somehow or other we do samba in a different world.
Yes, it's a real pleasure, Pavi. We have tried to have this discussion for such a long time and I'm very, very happy that we finally could make it. Pavi, that is a very good colleague. We have met each other for at least 5 years. We have worked together in several committees, in several events. Pavi, that comes from Malaysia, and I'd like him to introduce himself. So, Pavi, to start our conversation, tell us a little bit about your background, your experience, and how do you reach the FM world in your as a professional life?
Thanks, Tiago. My journey in facility management started without me knowingly about 17 years ago. More than that, about 18 years ago, and I was very much involved in the core business side of an organization, but yet being actively involved in the sales, marketing, business development. I also involved in overlooking contracts, managing slightly on supply chains, for example, coordinating logistics. Engaging people, that's the most important thing, engaging people. At the end of the day, my client has the ultimate benefit. So I've gone through various employments during my career. I've been in the sales and marketing, in the agriculture industry. I was in office automation. I served as a special assistant for a senior director for a company for some time. And I've been also working as a project manager for a client of mine in turning around kitchen constructions. So a little bit of experience here and there. And eventually I came into FM. Directly into FM through the introduction by a gentleman from the UK, and his name is Jonathan Hawley. Jonathan Hawley brought a software called Emergence many years ago. I think this was in 2011, and he introduced me the software about building maintenance. He said, okay, that was about building maintenance, how you manage building maintenance using software. So at that point of time, I didn't know much, but somehow or other, my curiosity made me to go and find out more about this software, and I've learned using the software within days. So Jonathan was very impressed about my ability to grasp, understand the needs, especially in maintenance management using softwares, and back then, and that is how I got myself being introduced into FM from a technology perspective. So the software that we used was the very early CMMS systems in the year of 2012. So ever since then, I started to be involved more actively into FM by resigning from my previous job and getting myself employed in a facility service providers organization. So I moved into the organization and I learned the operation, how it's all done, but it seemed to be nothing new. I felt very natural in the FM world, and I tend to move very quickly in terms of obtaining knowledge, and my understanding was, in fact, very much like how the Europeans and Americans were thinking about FM, and that made me to have a slight advantage compared to the rest of my colleagues in the industry who had very much maintenance management mindset. So I was having a strategic FM mindset. So that gave me a complete edge compared to the rest of them, because I saw the bigger picture. I saw it from the top. I saw the importance of having right strategies in order for you to have an excellent operation. So that gave me more exposure. And in the year of 2015, I set up my own company called Maxwell CFM International with an operating office in the UK today. And we have an office in Kuala Lumpur and in Borneo. So it is purely a consulting firm. And that firm, in fact, is the only consulting company in Malaysia at the moment. And we have others, but they do provide other FM services, such as building maintenance and such, but we do not provide that kind of services. So enough said about me pitching about my company. So I had a short stint being a military officer. I was a full lieutenant in the army, Malaysian Army. That gave me a lot of knowledge about managing people, managing logistics, setting priority for lives and people, and that knowledge, that an experience that I gained for about 8 years in the army is a real advantage. I mean, a big advantage for me to manage people's expectation at the end of the day. So this is how I got myself into FM. I'm loving it, and it's become a part of me. So in the year 2016, I got myself involved in the ISO standard. Oh, that was very unique how I got myself into that. In fact, I was talking to the Malaysian Standards Committee chairman about the importance of having standards in ensuring right maintenance activities is done in buildings and also on roads and other infrastructures. So at that point of time, he told me this: "Hey, Pavi, there's no such standards in the world. What are you talking about? You know, there's already engineering standards, and you have national standards. You have, you know, this and that. But what are you talking about?" But a year later, that in 2012, this TC267 was conceptualized and it was formed in the US. I think it was in the Washington meeting, if I'm not mistaken. So at that point of time, I did not have any communication with the TCs. I didn't know about such existence. 2 years down the road, I was informed about this. Hey, you were right. 3 years ago, you were talking about this thing. They have already formed this committee, and they're working on this. Malaysia is just an observing nation. We have an O category and P category. Why don't you join them? I mean, your thoughts are really good. Why don't you go and join them, and perhaps you can contribute something? And my journey started in with the National Standards Committee in Malaysia in the end of 2015. So ever since then, it is a joyride for me, enjoying myself developing the standards, enjoying myself delivering various talks in FM, revolutionizing the way FM is being taught in Malaysia, bringing the idea of strategy FM and the concept of business mind into FM rather than just merely operation. So that's my journey in FM. That's how I all started, and here I am talking to Thiago.
We worked together in this TC that Pavi mentioned about the formulation, the design, and the review of the standards around the 41,000 family. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. But Pavi, I like three things that you said that are very aligned and reinforce a lot of messages that we have spread in this podcast. Number one, you said that when you started, you were very good in understanding people needs way before to have specific skills or knowledge about specific aspects of FM. And this is key. Every time that we discuss that, if you understand customer needs, then you have a head start in comparison of the rest of the market. Number one. Number two, when you said that you could see the things from the topic, from a strategic perspective, and then you can double click or deep down in how do you transform this strategy in the actions or the plans and what you do in the daily business. And number three, your curiosity about understanding and learning each time more. So three aspects that all the time we're discussing in our podcast. And for probably for the guys that are listening to it in our country here in Brazil, you're probably very familiar with the Pavi's history because it's the history of the majority of the professionals around the family. So Pavi, tell us a little bit more about the Malaysia landscape in terms of the market of FM. You are the guy that have traveled a lot, as you just said. Your consultant company have business also in UK, one of the most mature countries, if I can call this way, in FM the world. How do you compare where you are related to other markets in terms of how established is the FM concept in the companies? Do you have any difference around private and public sector? Do you have business segments that are more advanced in the adoption of the FM strategy? Tell us a little bit about that, the landscape in the Malaysian market.
Yeah, thanks, Ego. The Malaysian market commands an estimated 5 to 6 billion ringgit, otherwise 1.5 billion dollars market. This is based on contract values, but I need to caution the audience for this is that there is no record saying that okay, the Malaysian market is about 1.5 billion US dollars. This is more on estimation based on the numbers that I have received from the government sectors and also from the private sector. So it could be 1.5 billion, it could be around 2 billion US dollar just for Malaysia. And the market here is growing. One, because the demand in the market from the core business sides or from the clients who wishes to focus their resources much on producing their products and services, look into securing FM contractors to support them throughout their journey. So the market is still growing, and almost every year there are new market players entering the market, and of course it's difficult for them, but there's plenty of opportunities here in Malaysia. But the market is quite, I would say, protective. Most of the companies that come from outside of Malaysia, they do have a joint venture here, and they work along with the locals to produce the services. I think this is quite common, and it happens all around the world. People work together unless they have the money, they have the resources to invest and test the market themselves. So the mindset of the FM industry here is that they believe that they are facility management service providers, but in the real fact is they are not facility management service providers, they are facility service providers. So there is a slight misconception here, but I don't blame them for having such a thought. That's because the exposure and the awareness is still developing. So eventually, instead of being identified as facility management service providers, they would realize that they are just facility service providers. So that's one part of it. The other part about the Malaysian market right now, especially after the post-pandemic period, which is now, most of the service providers are struggling to obtain sufficient manpower to help them in the delivery of services, especially in the cleaning services, the security services, and also other soft services. So this is one of the biggest challenges at the moment. But I think
So
that,
when
yeah, go on.
go ahead, sorry, Pav.
I was saying that, but this is just a temporary issue in Malaysia, and I also think that it's also a temporary issue globally. Once the borders have opened up with more flexibility, governments have loosened up their recruitment policies or immigration policies. I think might be getting more people from outside of Malaysia to come and work here.
It is funny what you said about the misconception around facility management and facility service providers. We have had this discussion as well here in Brazil, and especially in our local standards body, when we are describing and spreading the message around the 41,000 standards family. We also have this discussion about if it is a standard for the management, for the standard for the providers. And what I can see is the market is all the time reshaping itself. So from sometimes it's going further for one way, other times depends on how the economy is going good or not. You can see more activities around management, or on the other hand, more activities around the facility service. One thing that I think it was interesting that you just said about the COVID and the restrictions. You have a lot of flow from people from outside in our current market. Is that correct?
Yes, Tiago. In certain service sectors, such as cleaning, security, housekeeping, we're talking about cafeteria workers, those labor-intensive jobs. This is where we rely quite heavily from foreign workforce. So that was
Where do
an issue.
where do they came from, basically?
Yeah, most of them come around from this region, within Southeast Asia and also Central Asia. When I talk about Central Asia, sorry, it's not Central Asia. It's in fact South Asia. South Asia consists of India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, Pakistan. This is South Asia. So we have these two people from these two regions coming into Malaysia and working in the FM industry. So if it's Southeast Asia, we have people from Indonesia, people from Myanmar. Mostly these two countries are the one that's supporting workers into Malaysia.
When do you talk about understanding the needs of the customers, understanding the strategy? Communication and values and culture, they played an important role, usually, when you try to engage people around what has to be done, how to serve the customer. My question to you is, having people from multiple countries, how difficult or not is to engage them as a group?
The FM industry, believe it or not, many might think about this, that it is all centered and developed around culture. Cultural need defines specification of what we should have and so on. Culture determines our lifestyle. Culture determines our needs in many ways. So when you bring multiple people of multiple background, cultural background, that there is a challenge, and the challenge is overcome with the basic thing, which is communication between one another. So the fundamental here, before recruitment, there are several requirements laid out. Basically, they should speak in English at least, and when they are here in Malaysia, they are given an opportunity to learn the local language, which is Malay, and that is good enough for them to communicate effectively with whoever that they want, even with the clients or within among themselves or within their supervisors. So the fundamental here is that we in the FM industry need to strengthen the cultural aspect that is the core within any FM organization. So going back to basics about people, because we are in the people business, we need to understand more about what people need, how people think, how they behave, and everything here is centered around culture. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. And my question to you is Brazil, from a geographic perspective, is a big, big country. So north to south have 8,000 kilometers. East to west is the same. So it's not a country that is that usual or common people just come to work. Number one, due to the distances. Number two, to the language, as you just said. You have to establish English as a common language for everybody, and then you can deep down and learn and teach them how to speak in Malay. We have Portuguese, but our population doesn't speak English. And the rest of Latin America, for example, we speak Spanish, so it's a barrier. And now we are starting to face this challenge in the sense of how the best way to deal with people from coming from other countries to work with us. It has increased, what I think is a very good thing. And my question to you was in this sense: how do you have deal with that? But I like what you said. At the end of the day, the culture shapes the rest of the thing. If you understand the strategy, if you understand the needs, it's a little bit easier to minimize the communication impact that may have from people from different countries or different parts of the world. So, Pavi, in many countries, government, in the sense of the structure of the government, they played an important role in the size of the market from outsourcing business. Historically, in Brazil, we have more a more involvement. The FM business is more involved in the private sector, when companies are more flexible to hire, to fire companies from several types of service provisions. But when you look at the government, we still have a lot of opportunity to grow. So there's some aspects related to legislation that the government has to hire the staff for cleaning, for janitorial, for maintenance, for catering, whatever. In some case, we have a lot of legislations that make things not that flexible to work with. So the bottom line is, when you look for UK or US market, where outsourcing in the government sector is something that is mature structure, here we are going this direction. In Europe, people do not think about that. It's not an issue. How is that in Malaysia? How the government plays or acts in terms of outsourcing for the services in the structure? Bom, todo mundo sabe que qualquer governo, em função da quantidade de recursos que ele tem à disposição, ele pode exercer um papel importante em qualquer tipo de segmento, desde que aquilo faça parte da sua estratégia. É com essa provocação que eu encerro a primeira parte do bate-papo aqui com o Pavi. Fique atento que semana que vem tem a segunda e última parte dessa conversa bem interessante com ele. Para você que está nos ouvindo, não esqueça de curtir e compartilhar o conteúdo desse podcast. Se você estiver pelo YouTube, não esquece de ligar o sininho e clicar no botão de inscrever-se para ficar atento a todos os outros episódios, e fique atento que semana que vem tem mais Facility Management sem mistérios para vocês. Um grande abraço e até semana que vem.